Hello, it's Mike at Gamefromscratch, and it's the weekend. So what does that mean? News recap. It's time for This Week in Game Development, Week 23, for the week ending April the 24th of 2016. Now, this entire series is just a quick recap of the news and events from the world of game development. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Now, what you're going to find this week is one particular company kind of has dominated the headlines, and that company is Autodesk. So if you're not an artist, there's not a whole lot here. And if you hate Autodesk, well, you're just going to hate them a little bit more when we're done. Not that they've done anything wrong, it's just, you'll see. So anyways, let's jump right in. The first piece of news is Unreal Engine released 4.11.2 hotfix. As the name suggests, this is a hotfix, so it contains just fixes. A lot of them, as you can see from this list right here, which will be available in the comments down below, by the way. I'll link to a link containing all of these links, as I always do. So if you are experiencing problems with 4.11, be sure to check this out. There might be a fix for you. No new features, no new functionality, just a hotfix. Now let's get into the Autodesk related news. First off, Autodesk acquired Arnold. Or actually, they acquired Solid Angle, who make Arnold. Now, in the world of game development, Arnold isn't a huge thing because it's a renderer. And the reality is most of us work in full, real-time 3D at this day and age, or our rendering is done down to 2D sprites or whatever. So we're not making full-length film all that often. And that's exactly what Arnold is. Arnold was a renderer first created by Sony ImageWorks. So it was to make their movies such as Spider-Man, etc. So it's their in-house renderer. It's basically competing with the likes of Pixar's RenderMan, what's the other one? The Mental Ray, or the various built-in renderers that all 3D applications have. And this is another one of the options. It was very independent. It's got plugins for Maya, Softimage, Houdini, Cinema 4D, Katana, and Autodesk now own it. So it's going to be kind of interesting. And the fact that they own it is interesting to follow up on a piece of news we're about to look at. It's a very telling that the teams within Autodesk may not be talking all that well these days. But they do say, and I laugh about this one, that they will continue to make it available for all of these other packages that Autodesk currently does not own, which is a complete crock of. So don't expect that to happen. Expect to see Arnold for Katana, Cinema 4D, and Houdini to disappear probably within a year or two. But Autodesk says they won't, so it'd be interesting to see how that turns out. In further Autodesk news, they released Maya Extensions 2016 Extensions 2. Now, extensions are kind of basically like mini upgrades throughout the year, and there's actually a pretty impressive amount of stuff included in these things. So this is one of the upsides to subscription models. Now, we all hate subscription models for the most part, but for a few of us, they work out really well. They can be a huge cost savings, or they can be good from a taxable perspective. But the other advantage that we're starting to see, and this is the first time we're really starting to see it, is we're also seeing incremental improvements. It used to be that you had, Maya 6, and then you had to wait like 2 years or 3 years for Maya 7 to get all kinds of new features, etc. Well, now with these extensions, we're starting to see new features midterm. So in between point release or annual releases, we're still seeing continuous improvements. So this guy brings in a new render setup. It allows you to quickly configure things into groups and apply those settings to various different groups. A lot of animation updates. There's an new animation blend shape system with an updated UI for that. There is a new system where you can sculpt inside of a bone animated shape. So if you had to do a muscle bulge for a particular frame of animation within the actual posing, you can now do that. Very cool system. There's a quick rig so that you can quickly and easily create bipedal characters for human IK integration. There's new tools for blending. There's also some modeling stuff, etc. There's a procedural geometry system, kind of taking away a little bit of Houdini's thunder there, which allows you to create geometry procedurally. Check out this video I've linked down below for a little bit more details on the modeling and UV improvements that I have also actually potentially not mentioned, because the majority of the new updates here were in the improvements to the animation. But it's cool to see this stuff coming in the middle of an update cycle. So there is an upside to this subscription service kind of approach. Again, of course, we all know there are downsides too. And continuing in Autodesk news, Autodesk 2016 or 3D Studios Max 2017 was announced, and a lot of neat new features here. There's a new UI that's finally HD high DPI support built in, which is nice. The name of the game here is Viewport Performance Improvements. They're saying up to 3,000% better performance for 3D models inside of your viewport. So people are actually working day and day. If that works out, that would be a huge deal. On top of that, we've seen a lot of UVW, it was UV unwrapping improvements. You see the full list right there. A new sun system, a new physical material, so along the lines of PBR rendering, like what you've seen from Substance, etc. They now have a physical material built in for modeling real-world things like leather or copper, etc. There's modeling tool improvements. Python was integrated. That was somewhat shocking. A new text and shape tool. And probably the most confusing, this is very confusing, there's the new ray tracer. So they have a new renderer built in 3D Studios Max 2017. 2 days after they announced they bought and acquired one of the biggest commercial renderers out there, they announced that they're releasing one in-house. So it's been interesting to see which one ultimately wins out. If there's a lot of value in using ART, which is the Autodesk Ray Tracer renderer, which is a very awkward acronym. We'll call that one acronym. But it's kind of weird to see that, you know, they're buying a ray tracer and announcing a brand new one at the same time. So I'm not sure if some of the departments aren't talking to each other there, or if there's not a lot of faith in this new one, or what the deal is there. Maybe they're targeting two different segments. I don't know. I don't understand why you would need, on top of the built-in 3D Studios renderer, 2 additional renderers, but interesting to see where this all ends up. Another thing that happened, and this one actually put a little bit of egg on my face, because I announced the release candidate of Phaser 2.47 a few days ago, and then 2.47 full-on version was released a couple of days later. So I kind of announced this story twice. But I'm a big fan of Phaser. It's a very cool HTML5 library. If you haven't checked it out, do so. If you're interested in Gamefromscratch, I've done a full series of using it with TypeScript. I've also done a couple of videos showing you a complete, very basic game created in Phaser. I am a huge fan of Phaser. If you worked in HTML5, it's definitely one to check out. This is one of the last releases. The last release they're going to do is 2.5, and after that, it's just in maintenance mode from that point on, bug fixes, etc. So the last new feature release is going to be 2.5. So we're at 2.47. We're very, very close. And then after that, they're going to be transitioning over to something called Laser, which is Phaser 3, which is going to be, not backward compatibility potentially, etc. So this is the second from last possible release, I think. And you can see it added a lot of new stuff. Nothing here like earth-shattering, but there's a lot of updates. If you want to take a look through this list, there's definitely some nice stuff there. Sorry, my throat is cracking on me. All right, all better. Stupid cold. Anyways, our final piece of news, and this one may not sound like game development news at the first glance, and may not even make any sense to a lot of you on the first glance, but it should. This is actually important news, and that is version 5.1 of the JavaScript V8 runtime was released. Now, V8 is it's a Java virtual machine / compiler that is basically the core of Chrome. So the Chromium team developed V8 to give a faster JavaScript engine for inside the Chrome browser. And if that was it, that was it. So basically, you say, okay, there's a new version of the browser, blah, blah, blah. Nothing's really special there. But V8 has been adopted and has become a very important piece of software. V8 is ultimately the underlying technology that powers Node. And Node.js is kind of taking over the world. Now, what you're seeing a lot more of is JavaScript on the desktop, and it's the V8 runtime that is enabling that. It's bringing JavaScript performance closer to native performance, giving you access through things like Node.js to the native file system, native resources, etc. That's not part of V8, but V8 is what enables the JavaScript part. Node is what enables the system access part, and those two work together, have opened up the door towards a number of tools that have been authored in JavaScript. Things like Cocos Creator, which I just recently covered, the Superpowers game engine, the QICI engine that I also recently covered, as well as a number of editors, such as the Atom editor from GitHub, or Visual Studio Code, which in turn is based on something called Electron. So the code editors that we're all using these days are actually all being written on top of Node, which in turn is written on top of V8, as are many of these game engines. When you're seeing HTML5 game engines that are looking a lot more native, generally it's V8 behind the scenes that is making that happen. So a new update of V8 is actually a somewhat important piece of news. Now, the big things in this release, a lot of it is very specific. So if you're not working with it, you're not going to get what the point is. It's little changes in the way things work. Now, the biggest two changes in here is A lot of changes moved towards the EMCA script, or JavaScript 2017 draft spec. So they're basically moving to be compatible with the future versions of JavaScript. And then probably the biggest piece of news is WASM support. Now, WASM is an acronym, a very crappy acronym, but an acronym nonetheless for WebAssembly. And WebAssembly is exactly what it sounds like. It's a consortium of companies. See if I actually have the consortium list here. Yeah, here we go. Collaborators from Google, Mozilla, Microsoft, Apple, and the W3C WebAssembly community. So there's a lot of support behind this. And basically, this is assembly for the browser. So if you've heard of ASM.js, this is the same thing. Mscripting, same thing. It's basically standardizing that. So it's going to bring a special version of bytecode that all JavaScript virtual machines, well, that support it ultimately. So, this is every major browser maker. So we're going to assume that every browser is going to ultimately support it. But it's a lower level of code. It's bytecode. It's sort of like IL. There's IL for .NET languages. And it's at that level. So this code should theoretically run many, many times faster. And it should also run faster, quicker to download, and faster to instantiate than ASM.js, which is sort of, it's a kind of a version of JavaScript that compiles down to be really, really, really tiny and small. Well, this is going to be more natively supported. So this is sort of the attempt to bring assembly level code, which is a little misleading. It's more of a code to bring machine level code to the web browser. So this could really make a huge performance difference for games, etc. Now, of course, your code is not going to be legible like it is right now, which is a double-edged sword. Sometimes you want your browser code to be very, very legible. Sometimes you certainly don't. But the fact that it's going to be supported in V8 means that native 3D performance on the desktop is also going to be greatly improved speed-wise. Now, this is an early version of this. This is considered preliminary support. So don't expect anything immediately, but if you're working in that space, you could see a huge speed gain potentially for applications in the JavaScript space, at least that run over top of WebAssembly compatible virtual machines, which V8 is now almost one. So basically that is it for the world of game development. I hope you learned something, found something useful in there. If not, well, I hope it was at least entertaining. I will see you next week. See you later.